After a day that was supposed to be about Labour and then rebranding, it ended with Starmer cowering and his Labour Party further destroyed. Yes, the Prime Minister addressed the British people as he set out milestones in his plan for change. It was the highest sustainable growth in the G7, 1.5 million homes in England and Wales, and fast-track planning decisions on 150 major economic infrastructure projects, a police officer for every neighbourhood and 13,000 extra officers, PCSOs and volunteer special constables, a record 75% increase in the proportion of 5-year-olds starting school ready to learn, clean electricity by 2030 through GB Energy, to eliminate hospital backlogs, to meet NHS standards of 92% of patients waiting no more than 18 weeks for elective treatment. For those of you who missed his speech, it was just a load of crap. In today's video, though, we'll be discussing why Archer made this speech. He's made it big time. Not only that, but we'll also be looking at all the latest news from up and down the country. But first, hit the like button and subscribe to the channel and join our fast-growing community. Just to say, we have the Make Britain Great Again t-shirts available in our store. Go grab them now. Just 23% of respondents to the poll said they would vote Labour, compared to 24% for Reform UK and 26% for the Conservatives. Labour's share of the vote in this poll is almost a third less than its total vote in July's general election. Find out now. Pollsters believe this is for a number of reasons, including that Labour voters are less likely to say they would vote for the party again or are less likely to do so. Just 84% of Labour voters in the 2024 general election poll said they would definitely or very likely vote if a general election were held tomorrow, compared with 95% of Conservatives and 90% of Reform UK voters. Meanwhile, just 69% of Labour voters in the 2024 general election said they would vote Labour again, compared with 82% of Conservatives and 90% of Reform UK voters. Reform UK has overtaken Labour for the first time, according to a shocking new poll. Nigel Farage's party is in second place behind the Tories, with Labour in third place, according to pollsters. Find out now. It shows British politics is now a three-way battle between the Conservatives, Reform UK and Labour, with the parties separated by just 3 points. The Tories are on 26%, down 1 point from Find Out Now's last poll a week ago. Reform UK is up 2 points to 24%, leapfrogging Labour, which has fallen 2 points to 23%. The Lib Dems are behind on 11%, the Greens on 9% and the SNP on 3%. The results are a blow to Keir Starmer, who today unveiled Labour's plan for change as he seeks to get the government back on the front foot after 5 months of difficult headlines. Reform UK has overtaken Labour in a national opinion poll for the first time, pushing Keir Starmer's party into third place. Nigel Farage's party enjoys 24% of public support, up 2 points from last week, according to Find Out Now. The poll of 2,607 adults on Wednesday showed Labour in third place with 23% of the vote, down 2 points from last week, while the Tories are ahead on 26%. This is the first Westminster voting intention poll to put Reform ahead of Labour, prompting party chairman Zia Youssef to declare that it will win the next general election. The results are currently an outlier as Labour led Reform by between 7 and 11 points in 3 polls conducted in recent weeks by BMG, JL Partners and More in Common. Last week, Reform passed 100,000 members and unveiled Dame Andrea Jenkins, a former Tory minister who lost her seat in the election, as its candidate for the mayoral election in May. Mr. Youssef said, "Reform is in full swing in British politics. Reform is now polling at 24%, and for the first time, we are now polling ahead of Labour. We have recently increased our membership by 100,000, adding members at a record pace, and we are just getting started. The British people want real change after years of failure and deception. Reform will form the next government in the UK." Reform's deputy leader Richard Tice noted that this is the highest score in any poll since the party was founded in 2020. The party's chief whip, Lee Anderson, added, "It is amazing. Reform has outspent Labour in the election. The political tsunami is underway." The poll gave the Liberal Democrats 11%, the Greens 9% and the SNP 3%. It came as Mr. Keir sought to move on from a series of scandals in his first 5 months in office with a major speech on Thursday in which he outlined 6 milestones for his government. The Prime Minister's popularity has plummeted after Labour's landslide general election victory over his inheritance tax crackdown on farmers and the removal of winter fuel allowances from nearly 10 million pensioners. Louise Hay resigned as Transport Secretary last week. She was convicted of fraud a decade ago after it emerged, while there have also been high-profile rows over free and friendly. Support for reform in the general election came mostly at the expense of the Conservatives, but it came second to Labour in 98 constituencies, including many red-walled seats. Mr. Farage recently said he was now focusing more on winning over voters who currently support Labour or are not inclined to vote, rather than converting more Tory supporters. Neil Lawson, director of the progressive campaign group Compass, said the trend was becoming increasingly clear. Without a plan to bring about real and lasting change, and a mandate to do so, Labour would be doomed to the kind of power grab we are seeing around the world. Reform returned 5 MPs in the general election and won just over 4 million votes. Mr. Farage and Mr. Youssef are now focusing on the county council elections in May. The party says it needs to win more than 100 councillors if it is to mount a credible challenge to Labour. What are your thoughts on this? Let me know in the comments. Clive Bailey, a farmer, accused Labour of declaring civil war on the farming community after MPs voted against a motion aimed at protecting family farms from Sir Keir Starmer's proposed inheritance tax changes. The motion, which was defeated by 339 votes to 181, sought to block a 20% inheritance tax on agricultural property and land worth more than £1 million, an increase from the current exemption. Speaking in an interview, Bailey argued that Labour had cost him 100 rural seats at the next election. He pointed out that despite showing restraint so far, frustration among farmers was growing. Labour defended its inheritance tax proposal, arguing that it was necessary to close the £22 billion public finances gap. However, Labour MP Marcus Campbell-Severs raised concerns during the debate, causing chaos. In other news, a EasyJet flight from Sharm el-Sheikh to Manchester was forced to make a dramatic emergency landing in Venice after a passenger suffered a life-threatening medical emergency. It had taken off from the Egyptian resort at 8:05 p.m. local time on Wednesday, was bound for Manchester, and was expected to land at 12:10 a.m. on Thursday. However, as the flight rose above the Mediterranean, a sudden medical emergency on board sent shockwaves through the cabin. With the situation critical, the plane was immediately diverted to Venice, a decision that left no time or hesitation. There, emergency medical teams arrived to help, and the stricken passenger was immediately taken to a nearby hospital for urgent care. Meanwhile, the remaining passengers waited anxiously as the flight's route was dramatically changed. After dealing with a medical emergency in Venice, the flight eventually resumed its journey to Manchester. An EasyJet spokesperson confirmed the emergency, saying the diversion was made to ensure the passenger received the necessary medical attention. "We wish him a speedy and full recovery, and we are in touch with his family for their well-being," the spokesperson added, stressing the airline's commitment to the safety and care of its passengers and crew. Despite the unexpected twist, EasyJet expressed its deep appreciation for other passengers, acknowledging their patience and understanding during the unplanned stop, which the airline reiterated. The safety of all passengers is its top priority. Finally, Just Stop Oil, JSO, has announced plans for a major wave of protests this spring, and has pledged to blockade Parliament for weeks with thousands of activists. The eco group is committed to pressuring the government to end fossil fuel extraction by 2030. The planned protests aim to paralyze Westminster with week-on-week blockades, potentially causing major disruptions in the capital. JSO. On a massive scale, the government is planning to overwhelm the legal system with arrests, police stations and courts like never before. Critics have condemned the tactics, warning that they could put citizens and MPs at risk. A recent YouGov poll found that the public is strongly against such disruptions, with almost 75% of Britons believing that the prison sentences given to previous JSO protesters were either appropriate or too lenient. Even among those who support strong climate action, 58% support tougher sentences for illegal protests. Shadow Justice Secretary Robert Jenrick has called the planned protests militant and stressed that the government must ensure swift justice for those who break the law. Tory MP Richard Holden pointed to the police's current powers to deal with such protests, which he said undermine democracy, disrupt daily life and cost the economy millions. The group unveiled its plans at a 6-hour event in Birmingham, where activists read poems by jailed colleagues and shared stories of resilience. JSO insiders also hinted at the possibility of targeting major cultural and sporting events, including Wimbledon 2025. Despite the controversy, a JSO spokesperson defended the protests, claiming, "What are your thoughts on what we've discussed in today's video? Let me know in the comments section below."